of the black building. Or if you draw it forward and to the right, you'd run right into the top of the spire of that white building. In other words, it is visually referring to its neighbors. It's right in the middle of two very famous buildings. The building behind it is the last building ever built by a genius, a guy named Mies van der Rohe. We'll talk him, but he builds basically in the middle century, kind of a new modern style. And then the Wrigley building coming up here in white, it's pretty gorgeous, and we're getting a beautiful view, so let's take a good look at this. Now this building comes to us in the early 1920s. First building is from 1921, second building is 1924. And notice it's split in the middle. That's because back in the day, this was an industrial area called Pine Street. And of course, the architects had to put their two buildings on either side of train trestle that ran right through. The building was built by this chewing gum magnate, William Wrigley. He did Wrigley's Gum. And then of course, he gave the Cubs a home to play. We call it Wrigley Field. Now the building itself is a good example of how Americans were building early on. Skyscrapers come to us in the 1880s and all the way up to the 1920s. They tend to look a certain way. And by a certain way, I mean in love with European beauty. Take a look at this building and see if you can see a Spanish cathedral from the Renaissance living just underneath it. They did a lot of beautification tricks. One of them is start your eye at the middle of the building and bring it slowly to the top, and you'll notice the building gets whiter and brighter and lighter as the eye rises. 6 different levels of escalating white terracotta tile designed to create a soaring effect. Let me show you one more of these European beautiful buildings. It's right above those heaters. Oh, look at those heaters. They look nice, don't they? Straight off. And just past, I want to show you a building with these little Roman temples. Straight ahead, you've got these buildings with these 4 little Roman temples on its 4 corners. You've got a central tower and a large Roman temple up top. This is a building back in the day called the Jewelers Building, in Al Capone's time. You can imagine during his life, jewelers were a little nervous to be running jewelry buildings during the Great Depression. A town full of gangsters, so the building had this security feature. If you look immediately to your left, that's Wacker Drive. It's got 2 levels. The lower level there is called Lower Wacker. Picture driving your car in 1930 in under Lower Wacker into the basement of the Jewelers Building, pulling your whole car onto a car elevator and taking a car elevator ride up to the base of that tower to conduct your jewelry business. This was to spare people from wandering around downtown Chicago with big bags full of diamonds. Look at the outside again, you'll see that European beauty and ask yourself why. What does beauty do for you? Well, it combats the height. Skyscrapers are such new tall things. Beauty is there to make you feel peaceful. For a generation of American architect, they said that's how you actually figure out what you think is beautiful, because when you stare at it, it makes you feel peaceful. Round the bend here, 2 of the most distinctive buildings on the skyline you will see, nicknamed the Corncob Towers, for reasons I think you can see why. They go up in the late 60s, they have their own moment right on Time magazine. Some people suggest that the original artists who drew the home of the Jetsons got the idea what the city of the future should look like by looking at this. Really what the architect's trying to do here is create a floor plan where everybody gets a view. So notice how the corn cobs are basically stacked circles. He just carved the circles up like slices of pie. Everybody who lives in there, their unit starts narrow and fans out. Everybody gets a balcony, everybody gets a view. Look a little closer and you can actually see double stacked levels of community. He wanted to create an opportunity for people to move downtown and enjoy restaurants, bars, and nightlife, and offices, and dry cleaners, basically all the amenities at your fingertips. He even believed that people should pay reasonably priced rents. Downtown price for these units, 1967, 2 bedrooms, $235 a month.
Wow.
Coming up on the left-hand side, I want to show you a Spanish architect who believed that architecture is theater. He's actually Catalonian. His name is Ricardo Bofill, and he wanted to create this giant glass mirror. So if you look here, you can see the intense mirrored glass. But he's not done yet. Look at the flat stone pilasters on the front, and notice they all connect and create the outline of a Greek temple. Now last but not least, you're going to start to see, look at any of the pilasters and see that lighting effect it's starting? We can just now make it out. He was one of the first people to hire a lighting designer, a theatrical lighting designer, to create this cool shadowy effect on the building at night. And he started very much a trend. So as we go out, you're going to start to see these buildings light up and create this sort of beautiful nighttime version of Chicago that we'll probably enjoy on the way back. One of the best places to see this stuff is on the Chicago Riverwalk. Here, look to your left. I love this Riverwalk. It's about almost a mile and a half long. You can walk it, see the city. I love this little piece here. This is called the theater. Two things about it that are amazing. Look at the trrees dotting there. So simple, but by dotting that with trees, you get these little canopies of nature that provide shade in the summertime and get this little sense of privacy, right? As we walk around, what we really want is to be in public, out with everybody, but at the same time, carved off in our own little groups, with our friends, with our family, with our people we know. One other final subtle touch, if you look ever so softly, weaving its way through there is a sloped ramp. That invites people with strollers, people in wheelchairs, people with bad needs. It invites everyone to the Chicago River. Over on the left-hand side, I want to show you the last little building here with a European beauty touch. Called the Builders Building, from the mid-20s. Look all the way up top, you're going to see pillars, right? Secret of these pillars is they convey strength, size, solidity. A bunch of builders with a strong building, the pillars sort of convey grandeur, right? But one final note, this is a skyscraper. What is a skyscraper? It is a creature of steel. See all that stone on the outside? It is decoration. Skyscrapers are steel creatures, right? The stone is just an accent piece in suggesting the strength from way back in the day when stone used to support stone buildings. Now, all this is true up until late 1920s, mid-20s, a new style comes in. It's very much as we sort of shift into the roaring 20s and turns into the jazz age, architecture starts to look totally different. Take a look to the right and see the sleek new style of what we call the roaring 20s. This is the skyscraper style of Al Capone, basically. Right? They call this Art Deco. Now notice, no European beauty. It doesn't look like a church or a cathedral. It looks sleek and streamlined. And here's something you almost always see, rising vertical lines. Yeah? Those lines pull your eyeballs straight up and emphasize the height of the building. Why did Al Capone always like pinstripes on his suit? Made him look a little taller. It's the same thing for a building. As we go by, you may notice some pillars with busts on the top. Those busts are famous merchant princes like Aaron Montgomery Ward or Marshall Field. This was a shipping and receiving warehouse for the merchant princes, and of course, back in the day, these days it's office space. Now straight ahead of us, you're going to see the Chicago River split. To the left is the old American Indian shortcut to the Mississippi. To the right is the passageway up north. We're going to take a little right turn here first. But imagine that because the river carves us up into sides, you've got the right side is the north, left side is the south. So where the river splits and shoots out like a Y or a T, you can imagine that's the west side dead ahead. Chicago has three sides. Now look a little closer and you can imagine in the 1830s, that was the very beginning of the western frontier. Some of the first railroad tracks ever laid to reach out to the pioneers laid right over there. In fact, see that wall with circles in it? Those circles are fans venting trains that still run on that spot to this day. Now a building moves in just a few years ago called River Point. There it is. And the architects wanted to take advantage of the fact that they've got the first spot looking west. So if we look at the base of River Point, we can imagine a little symbolism there suggesting that look west. Look at the base of the building and think about St. Louis. What do you see? The arch, yeah? Now during the daytime, we've got this mirrored glass that shows you the city. It's a little eroded because it's getting backlit. But look all the way up to the top of that mirror, and then notice, what do you see? The inverse of the arch, as though this building was reflecting everything, even itself. Coming around the bend here, we take our turn and begin to look north. Pretty cool. I mentioned that the bridges went up earlier today. If you look straight ahead, you're going to see the only bridge we leave permanently raised. It's the old Carroll Avenue Railroad Bridge. It's from 1908. Now, if I told you that all these bridges are lifted and lowered with 108 horsepower, that's about half the size of the engine in your car. How can that little tiny engine lift something that weighs thousands of tons? Well, it's balanced like a teeter-totter, right? Doesn't matter how much you weigh, as long as your buddy weighs close to you, you and your friends bounce up and down without much trouble on a teeter-totter. Same idea here, just put to good use in Chicago's bridge-making style. It was a trick in the early 20th century to make heavy bridges light as air. Across from the old bridge is an old warehouse for ice. Imagine in the 1890s, all these windows and balconies were filled in, trains pulled up and took summertime ice down to the slaughterhouse district so they could ship beef east to New York City. 1980s is going to see this rehabbed and turned into what it is today, Fulton House. It's a kind of condominium complex. Architect who did the rehab is a guy named Harry Weiss, who will later, in 1989, build 4 cottages next door. Here they come. They're shaped like sails. That's not a coincidence. He comes out of the Navy and was a lifelong sailor. Now look at the front face of these cottages. And he is, of course, very inspired by sailboats. 6 stories apiece, 4 townhouses, each flows into the next. And think of sails and look at the skylights. Think of crow's nests and look at the balconies. Think of portholes and look at those circular windows. These are called the river cottages. Well, friends, we're going to execute a turnaround. So it's at this spot we always take a 5-minute refreshment break. If you need to hit the heads or the restrooms, they're right behind you. Felipe, your bartender there with grown-up hot chocolates, childhood hot chocolates. He's even got cold beers and rum punches. Take care of Felipe. We'll take care of you. I'm going to put my mask back up and walk around. This is a great opportunity for me to find out if anyone has any questions or any concerns about the tour. Otherwise, just sit back, relax. We'll resume this narration in just a few moments.